This is just the start, as a brand new trade report revolving around one of the Blues' best players is only getting crazier as new insight and new reports reveal that it is far from over. And that, of course, is about Robert Thomas. We're going to talk about that as well as multiple other updates, as a couple other Blues are really starting to turn heads around the hockey world this offseason. And we're going to break down exactly what that means later on in this episode. But before we get into it, Mark, we have to acknowledge all of the great subscribers here on the channel. Your support has been unbelievable. And not only that, guys, yes, we have a Facebook page and a lot of you guys have found it. The support over there has been unbelievable. So if you have not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel or follow us on Facebook as well, make sure to go over there and follow us to see some more content. But Mark, let's get right into it. Let's start with Dylan Holloway. He's over at the World Championships for Team Canada, and he looks pretty good. He's putting up a couple of points. He's been fantastic. So what have you seen from Dylan Holloway, since his high ankle sprain? That's a tough injury to come back from in the middle of a season. Not only in the middle of a season, he finished very strong, and now he's at the World Championships.
I think a big thing with Dylan Holloway, too, is not only did he have a goal and assist, and that game's still going on as we're recording that, but yesterday he had a goal as well. That's 2 goals and an assist. That is against Sweden and going in today against France, I believe it is as well. This is a guy that at every level has been showing. Of course, we didn't get to see him in the playoffs over the past couple of years, which does suck, but we're going to see it in the near future. But this is a guy that continuously progresses in the right direction. I mean, 24 years old. There's so much room to grow, and Darius, coming off a season like you did, of course, dealing with an injury that's hard to come back from, but I truly do think Dylan Holloway is not only going to be a decent part of the future, this is going to be a big part, a young guy making statements, one of the top pieces on this team when it came to the most productive line across the league. Darius, I kind of want your opinion too. Of course, we know the extension is kicking in going into next season, $7.7 million, but seeing his production at every single level, does this kind of feel like we're underwriting how good of a deal this is going to look, especially with the rising cap world?
With the cap going up, this is going to be a $9 to $10 million player with his production if it continues to go the way that we've seen it go. I mean, if he continues playing the way that he's playing and he continues to stay healthy, which has been an issue over the course of his career so far, he'll be totally fine. He's going to be well worth the money. And you mentioned the other thing. They finished the season very strong with the best line in hockey. And who else is on that line? Robert Thomas, of course. And of course, there was a brand new report that, I covered yesterday on the channel. But before we get into that and the specifics of some new details on it, I do want to let you guys know that this video is brought to you by Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app that brings you that much closer to all the action every single night. And we're going to get into some picks and promotions later on in this episode. But guys, make sure to download the app using the link in the description and using promo code DIGEST when you do so. New users get $50 instantly in their lineups when you play your first $5. So shout out to Prize Picks once again for sponsoring this video. But over to Robert Thomas, and I broke this down a little bit yesterday. There was a trade report that broke that around the trade deadline, Robert Thomas, we knew like he was going to be traded. He was shopped. He was up for grabs, whatever you want to say, right? Like he wasn't actually going to get traded unless it was a massive haul. And I talked about this yesterday, Mark, and I've spoken to a couple of people since because, guys, I saw your comments. I truly believe this was a piece or maybe two, depending if it was a draft pick, away from happening. I have to be honest. Like I thought, this was very close and we can discuss it, but there's been a new update and I want your thoughts on this too, Mark, because obviously you weren't there, and I'm very curious for how you feel about a deal like that. There's been some new reports that they are expected to circle back in the offseason. The Wild are not done. They are going to be hovering around like hawks on, Trocheck, on Robert Thomas this offseason. They are coming back. There is going to be another discussion, and this time it could be with Alex Steen. So what do you make of that initial report and the fact that this is not over? They are going to discuss this again in the summer. It doesn't mean it gets done, but I think this was actually very close to actually happening.
And I think the big thing is, listen, looking at Robert Thomas, we know the #1 centerman, the #1 player when it comes to this team, when you're looking at the youth, and of course, him moving forward on this, the top line, everything in between, it gets very interesting. Moving into this, of course, next season, we're going to see a new route. We've seen, of course, multiple people talk about maybe this being a retool. The team is actually not as far away as we're expecting to make another push to the playoffs. But Darius, if this team is even thinking about going into that retool, moving out guys to get in younger guys, to make the new push, a new era of Blues hockey coming through. A deal headlined by those two guys, of course, gets very interesting. Now, of course, with the deadline and them offering a guy like Wallstedt, it's going to get interesting now in the fact that not only did Wallstedt take over the starting goaltender, they ran with him in the playoffs as well, going into the second round. So it feels like if this is a trade, it might even include a guy like Gustafsson instead of Wallstedt. Are you more pleased taking on a bit of older goaltender that can step in and play immediately to help you push? You already have two goaltenders, but I think it's going to really come down to how Alex Steen views this roster moving forward with Robert Thomas. Like I said, if you want to go into a complete teardown, yes, make the trade, but it's going to get interesting and I'm not going to sit here and say this Blues team can't make the playoffs, because I think keeping Robert Thomas might seem like a smart play, especially if you want to make the push, but I think you can get elite value, especially with every team wanting a piece of him.
100%. And I want to make it clear, and I don't know if I made it clear enough in my past video. I want to keep Robert Thomas as a Blue. I think Robert Thomas should continue to be a Blue. I think Robert Thomas could potentially be the next captain of the Blues. That being said, I think there's a big difference between what I want and what might actually happen in terms of a trade and what could go through. And I believe that this was very close to happening. And I believe that if they revisit it, depending on the pieces, it could still happen this offseason. And let me, I said in the video yesterday, I think it was very close to happening, maybe a piece or two away. And I didn't really explain why. So let's get into it. And you kind of went into it too, Mark. Jesper Wallstedt is a starting goaltender of the Minnesota Wild, and he's just 23 years of age. Now, I saw a lot of people saying, you can see the stats down below, saying, why do the Blues need a goalie? They have Joe Hofer and they have Jordan Binnington. Guys, let's take off the 2019 goggles for a second. Jordan Binnington has not been good besides the Four Nations face-off in a while, and he's not even the starting goaltender of this Blues team heading into next year. It's Joel Hofer. Now, Joel Hofer has looked pretty good. Maybe he is the starting goaltender. But if you were to acquire Jesper Wallstedt, you would have your starting goaltender, and you wouldn't have to worry about goaltending for 10 years at that point. Obviously, if everything goes right, you wouldn't have to worry about it. And he's putting up really good numbers. You would solidify a new number one in this trade. Not only that, of course, you're giving up, a point per game production with Robert Thomas, but you continue to get younger with a younger core that's coming up with a guy like Yurov, who's going to be a great player. He was playing in a sheltered role as a third line center over in Minnesota. And not only that, this trade would not go through as that trade was. And it didn't. The Blues said no. But if they added another piece like Charlie Stramel, if they added another piece like a first round pick, which they didn't have last year, and maybe that played into it as well because they traded for Quinn Hughes, who looks like he might not even resign there, but that's a story for another day. I feel like this could have been close to going through. And if they revisit, if the pieces are right, if the timing is right, guys, I could see this happening. I do honestly believe they're going to be motivated to move Jordan Binnington this summer. So they're going to be looking for goaltending as well, because Joel Hofer has not signed past this season too. So there's a lot of moving pieces. I think they're always looking, Doug Armstrong, always kicking tires, trying to see if he can improve and get younger. So I don't know if it would make them better immediately, but they're continuing to build up this young core. So I don't know how you feel about that too, Mark, but that was kind of my thought process on it. And I have to say, I think they're going to revisit it. But at the end of the day, if it was me, if I was the GM, I wouldn't even entertain trading Robert Thomas. But if he's really out there and they're trying to acquire some pieces for him, I think that was closer than any other trade that we were discussing leading up to the trade deadline.
And I think a big thing is looking at the Minnesota Wild. We know they're going to be active. They're going to be aggressive. They were already aggressive going out to get Quinn Hughes, and it makes you think, if an offer comes to the table, if it's two of these players and just the two players, you stray away from it. But if they offer a package like we've seen for Quinn Hughes, what was it, Marco Rossi, another young winger, a young defenseman in Zeev Boyum, another player, and then also a first-round pick, if you're getting four pieces coming back, that's an equivalent to maybe even 4 first-round picks. You really need to start thinking about. Darius, listen, once again, we're making it clear to the fans, we don't want to move for Robert Thomas. Robert Thomas was a part of the best line of hockey, one of the best centermen in the league, despite a couple of people saying he's not a 1T. I don't even understand that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's a trade I'd make unless it's an offer that blows your socks off and you legitimately cannot say no to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, again, there was the groundwork for a deal being built there with the Minnesota Wild that would have been that with a couple other pieces. As is, it doesn't make sense. There's a reason the Blues said no. But I think if they are motivated to move him for whatever reason, and we kind of know the reason, but obviously it doesn't help them in the immediate, right? It would be a long-term play. Then I could see that making some sense if you add a couple more pieces. So if they do revisit it in the summer, I would not be surprised if we hear more about this or that a deal could be taking place, heading into next season. But ultimately, just want to reiterate again, should not trade Robert Thomas. But guys, this video is brought to you by Prize Picks, and Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app. Make sure to download the app using the link in the description and using promo code DIGEST. New users get $50 instantly in their lineups when you play your first to $5. They got a lot of great promotions going on coming up next week. And not just next week, every single week. They have Taco Tuesday, where you have discounted projections on the board all day long, every single Tuesday. Not only that, every single night when you set your lineup, you can win a chance for two to the 2026 NBA Finals that are happening very shortly here. They're headed to the Eastern Conference and Western Conference Finals there respectively, and Flex Fridays as well, which just passed. But every single Friday, you can earn up to 40% higher payouts on the app as well. So make sure to download the app, use the link in the description. And guys, it really helps us out here on the channel as well. But Mark, take us home.
But listen, leave your thoughts on everything down below. Again, we're not saying trade Robert Thomas, but what do you think a fair package for him would be? Do you think there's a world where they actually move on from him, or would you rather just keep him on this roster and make the push for the playoffs because they're not that far away? I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Darius, and take care, Blue Sens.